Hey there, everyone. I had just created this most awesome video and it was like amazing. The only problem was I forgot to put start recording. So here I go again talking about pages 27 to 35, which is the end of chapter 1. So one of the things that I wanted to point out that I didn't mention in the last video was on page 27, she finds out that as they're going back up, just before this sort of switch over here, that she seems to realize that the walls have a fleshy aspect to them, kind of like the way that you would see the inside of your skin, as if we traveled inside of the gold of a beast. This is very important later on in the novel, especially in chapter 5, but also this is where she realizes in chapter 2 that things are not made of coquina and stone as much as the psychologist wants them to believe. In fact, it is something much different and much more uncanny and therefore scary in a way. Okay, then this chapter really focuses on the idea of freedom and control, most especially on control. So, one of the things that happens is that the psychologist wants to go down and investigate things herself, and the psychologist says, "Only observe from the top of the stairs. We don't know whether there are toxins. When we come back, we should be wearing breathing masks. These at least we had inherited from the last expedition." And then it's very interesting to see what the psychologist says. And this part of the chapter is where we get to finally see what the psychologist has been doing all along. Before, it's only suggested that she sees visions, she sees weird things, fuzzy things. But now, paralysis is not a cognitive analysis. What? First off, it's in the form of a question, but the way that it's presented by the biologist, she says she said to me with a pointed stare as if it's a command. Paralysis is not a cognitive analysis. This is a hypnotic suggestion. So paralysis, or not wanting to do something, is not a cognate meaning an aware of analysis. In other words, it's not an acceptable answer. So not doing something is not an acceptable answer. But what happens before she would kind of say, "Oh, well, that's kind of weird." Okay. But now she says, "I felt a kind of itchiness come over me, but I said nothing and did nothing." So, why is there an itchiness? Might be parasites, but it's because, as she finds out a little bit later, it's because she is now becoming immune to the hypnotic suggestions of the psychologist. And this plays a central role later in this chapter, right? So I'm going to give you two examples of this. So on page at the bottom of page 28, they ask the psychologist what she thinks because she goes inside of the cave. I call it a cave. Sorry, tower, tunnel, building, cave, and she comes back up. And then they say, "So what do you think about it?" And she says, "Interesting. I've never seen anything like it before." She seemed as if she might want to continue, but then decided against it. Why is that important? She probably knows more than she's leading on. Thank God she doesn't say what she really knows, because she will later in Book 3. Book 3 has a prominent role for your favorite psychologist. "Interesting," the anthropologist said. "No one has ever seen anything like that in the entire history of the world. No one. Ever. You call it interesting?" She seemed close to working herself into a bout of hysteria, while the surveyor just stared at the both of them as if they were the alien organisms. Wait, why did she say alien organisms? Does that mean that something weird is going on here? That something foreign is there? Alien meaning foreign, right? Foreign organisms that we're unfamiliar with. "Do you need me to calm you?" the psychologist asked. But the biologist adds, there was a steely tone to her words. So it's not just the fact that she says, "Do you need me to calm you?" It's, "Do you need me to calm you so that you can be normal again? Or are you going to listen to me?" That's the kind of tone or impression or connotation that you get from how she is saying it. That made the anthropologist mumble something non-committal. You People do that a lot. "I need time to think about this. We need time to decide what to do next." I meant, of course, that I needed time to see if the spores that had hailed would infect me in significant ways, enough to confess to what had happened. And she won't, but surely it really does. Because on the next page, on page 30, this is page 30, towards, excuse me, not page 30. Sorry, it's page 32. I kind of skipped through some of this. She says, the psychologist says at the top of page 32, "Tomorrow we will go back to the tunnel. We will go deeper, taking certain precautions like wearing breathing masks, like people do with COVID-19 and other pandemics. We will record the writing on the walls and get a sense of how old it is, I hope. Also, perhaps a sense of how deep the tunnel descends and goes down. In the afternoon, we'll return to our general investigations. We'll repeat this schedule every day until we think we know enough about the tunnel." So this seems perfectly normal. And yet, this is kind of skipping down to the next paragraph, and yet, there's always that uncanny feeling. Something about her tone seemed rehearsed. So what is the importance of it being rehearsed? In other words, this sounds like something that the psychologist knows she has to say and uses each word on purpose as if it has some sort of meaning or it has some sort of purpose. And if she screws something up, something may happen. And as we find out earlier and later down here, consolidation of authority. She's starting to really ramp up how she um, directly affects them through her conditioning, right? So consolidation means to put a whole lot of things into one central place, consolidating ideas, consolidating people, consolidating everything. Authority is power and control. So, in other words, it's a consolidation, getting everyone to agree under one authority. Immediately, the surveyor and anthropologist beside me went slack. So, they are completely open to this hypnotic suggestion. And it's very funny that the biologist purposely mimics them. Again, let's refer back to adaptation here for a second. This is another case where she makes an adaptation to something, right? She knows what the psychologist is probably expecting them to do. Therefore, when she sees the others do it, she automatically knows how to adjust and adapt to the situation. So again, adaptation is extremely important in this novel in order to survive and in order to hide one's true identity or self. This next paragraph is quite long, and you could probably break it up into two body paragraphs. "You will retain of having discussed several options with regard to the tunnel. You will find that you ultimately agreed with me about the best course of action, that you felt quite confident about this course of action. You will experience a sensation of calm whenever you think about this decision, and you will remain calm once back inside the tunnel, although you will react to any stimuli as per your training. You will not take undue risks. You will continue to see a structure that is made of cocaine and stone. You will trust your colleagues completely, and feel the continued sense of fellowship with them. When you emerge from the structure, anytime you see a bird in flight, it will trigger a strong feeling that you are doing the right thing, that you are in the right place. When I snap my fingers, you have no memory of this conversation, but will follow my directives. You will feel very tired, and you will not dream, you will not have nightmares." Whoa! So, as it goes further down in this paragraph, she says, that biologist says that she understands the psychologist's role was to provide balance and calm. However, it is one thing you might be receiving a hypnotic suggestion, and quite another to experience it as an observer. So I want to go back a second to something that I had said earlier. Before, Vandermeer made a point that they appear to be more as participants rather than in a controlled environment, right? They're not in control of the situation. They don't know anything. They don't have control over anything. But now that the biologist is sort of impervious or can see through the hypnotic suggestions, now she sees herself as an observer, and she's going to start using her abilities to understand transitional environments, her ability to adapt, and her ability to figure things out is going to become an extremely important part of her success and what she wants to do in this novel. And what did she mean by saying we would continue to think of the tower as made of coquina in stone? That means probably what she had said earlier, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. If you need to go back to it, it's the gullet of the beast. So perhaps she's right. This is something much more than what she signed up for. Most important, however, I could guess at one way in which the spores had affected me. They had made me immune to the psychologist's hypnotic suggestions. And so, with that, I'm going to go to page 34. And this is where we get to see some things that we haven't seen yet, including the term uncanny, my favorite term in this book. Estrangement, in all its many forms, was nothing new for these missions. Estrangement means putting people estranged from each other or keeping them separate. I understood this from having been given an opportunity along with others to view videotape of the re-entry videos of the 11th expedition. Reasonably enough, in most cases, family members call the authorities, finding their loved ones return uncanny or frightening. So what makes it frightening? Well, think about this. Let's assume that you knew someone who disappeared and then 1 year later they showed up on your doorstep or even inside the house and you said, "Oh my God, where have you been?" And they just stare at you. Wouldn't that be a little bit frightening and weird and very wow, crazy at the same time? So because it's so crazy, you know who they are, but they haven't been here for a year or a year and a half. You're like, "What are you doing here? Where were you?" As we find out later, they don't necessarily know where they went, right? They don't know that they went to this place called Area X, unless they told them. So, one of the things that's very important is that when it comes to chapter 2, is that she is going to see some things that are familiar yet unfamiliar, and things are going to change. So next time I'm going to talk about chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a lot of fun. It gets crazier from here on out. This is just the very beginning. Just imagine how far this thing's going to go. All right, see you soon.